Good morning. This morning I'm going to talk about anti-Semitism from Hitler to Hamas. This is perhaps a prequel to what I spoke about yesterday. Where does Hamas come from? Who is Hamas? I think it's important to understanding who Hamas is and what they stand for in order to make any kind of sense at all of what happened on October 7th. Where do they come from? What do they espouse? What do they aspire to? There'll be a little bit of overlap. Today, I'll have some selections from the Hamas Charter. If you're thinking, well, they revised that in 2017, I say, really? Does October 7th tell you they revised anything? They made it more palatable for the outsiders, but their internal discourse hasn't changed. Does anybody recognize what this thing is with the swastika on it?
It's a kite.
It's a kite used to carry incendiary devices from Gaza into Israel and set fires. Okay? And you know who these guys are. One point of contact between Hitler and Hamas is their influences, their proof texts, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Now, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion was published initially in Russia in 1903 under the supervision of Pyotr Ivanovich Rachkovsky, soon after taken over by Sergei Alexandrovich Nilis. The protocols did not have worldwide circulation until just at the end of the First World War. The First World War created a lot of questions in the minds of a lot of people, and not just Germans. Why are we fighting? Astronomical losses, casualties, deaths. It was announced in Germany we're going to enter into an armistice treaty and whatnot. We lost. And they said, what? A week ago you said we were winning. There are no big battles fought on German soil. How could it happen? It must be the Dolchstoß, the stab in the back from the Jews, right? So soon after this otherwise inexplicable catastrophe, the First World War, the protocols found a readership throughout a growing segment of the world. And it's translated into German in 1919, translated into Arabic in 1926. Okay. Other languages. So in the Hamas Charter, you find those who drafted the charter. Abdullah Azzam is among the major ones who wrote it up, invoking three kinds of texts to prove the truth of what they claim in the charter about the Jews. One is the Quran, holy word. The other is the text from the Hadith, which is oral traditions, teachings, sayings attributed to the prophet that are not in the Quran. And the third, proof text, Protocols of the Elders of Zion. It becomes the new holy writ with regard to the Jews. For the Nazis and for the jihadists. Okay. So, just to reiterate, a principle that I talked about yesterday. In the case of the Nazis, they were not anti-Semites because they were racist. They were racist because they were anti-Semites. You recall the idea that you have to. My claim is you have to establish an anti-Judaic, anti-Semitic premise concerning the holiness of the other human being, what constitutes that holiness, in order to arrive at a racist outlook. Anti-Semitism is a first principle of the Nazi Weltanschauung, the worldview, from which racism is derived. Okay? It is not the case that we are all B'nai Adam, children of Adam. It is not the case that each of us has a fundamental connection to the other. In fact, an Aryan has no more connection to a Jew than you have to an insect. You remember the scene in Schindler's List when Goethe is, he's seriously attracted to Helen Hirsch, the Jewish woman working in his home. He's super attracted to her. It's too bad you're not human. There could be possibilities for us. It's too bad you're not human. Okay. So the question is that at the center of everything, this question, what makes the other human being matter? Should I give my life for another human being? Should I suffer? Should I bleed for someone else? Scenes from other movies jump to my mind, but I won't go into them. There's a line from Ombre. Paul Newman says, "I just didn't feel like bleeding for him." Do you feel? What is there to die for? How we understand the holiness, the dearness of the other human being, and the nature of our responsibility to and for the other human being shapes everything else we encounter. Okay? The Nazis have created image and likeness of God. You know this image from Michelangelo. This is a Nazi view. Human holiness, as articulated in the Torah, as I said yesterday, presents us with a profound, radical connection to each other, a connection that precedes ever meeting one another. Here in these mythical images of the Aryan and the Jew, you see a radical disconnection. The human being is justified by race and the will to power, according to Nazi thinking. A will to power. Not goodness, justice, truth. All those things are determined by the will to power, hence triumph of the will. Right? Nobody looks like this Aryan. Nobody looks like this Jew. These are mythical figures. What is Hitler's aim, as he himself stated it to Hermann Rauschning in 1922? He says, "When I come to power, my purpose is to eliminate the tyrannical God of the Jews and his life-destroying Ten Commandments." The annihilation of the Jewish people, as Hitler himself understood, and others, is the annihilation of the witnesses to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who poses the most serious ideological threat to National Socialist thinking. Again, as I said yesterday, the idea is not that everything Jewish is evil, but everything evil is Jewish. All evil comes from the Jew. Therefore, if you read Mein Kampf, you'll see this. The sense of mission with regard to the extermination of the Jews is for the sake of all humanity. It's for the sake of a cleansing, a purification, rendering the world Juden rein. Okay? Now, this is an important point, and it carries over into jihadist thinking about the Jews, especially in Sayyid Qutb, about whom I'll comment shortly. The category of race and for the Nazi ideologues is a little different from how we understand race in our American, other European discourse. It's a little different. Race does not lie or is not reducible to anything that meets the eye. It's Rassenseele, race, soul. I mean, German has a great way of putting nouns together, right, to make words. Rassenseele, race, soul. So as articulated by Alfred Rosenberg, Nazi ideologue executed in 1946 as a war criminal, race is a synonym for character, soul, thought. The Judaism of the Jew, in other words, is in the soul, is in the blood. Aryan Geist, Aryan spirit is poisoned, threatened, not just by Jewish blood, but by Judaism. And so, I mentioned yesterday this image from 1943, Der Stürmer, of the contagion. Every Jew has to be eliminated. If you want to get rid of smallpox, you can't allow one case to continue because it'll infect everybody else. And it's highly infectious. So the contagion is, you see under the microscope, the virus, the bacteria, so on, Stars of David. And notice it doesn't meet the naked eye. The evil is as invisible and ubiquitous as Satan. It's everywhere. And it's not just in the Talmud Judah. The Ostjuden, the Eastern Jews, the Talmud Jews with the side curls and the black coats and stuff. No. Even the most dangerous one is your business partner who looks like you. Hitler referred to the Jews as the invisible wire pullers. They're everywhere, right? And the final solution has to be just as ubiquitous as the presence of this satanic evil. Therefore, in 1942, the Nazis sent a contingent to Tromsø, Norway. Anybody been to Tromsø? It's pretty far north. Tromsø, because there were 17 Jews there. That's not scapegoating. That's not xenophobia. That's not envy. None of those things. In the manifestation of the hatred, these come into play, perhaps. But you don't have to go to the Arctic if you need a scapegoat. It's 220 miles north of the Arctic Circle. Okay. Enter Hassan al-Banna, who established the Muslim Brotherhood in March 1928. He, along with 5 or 6 other men, al-Banna in Egypt is establishing the Brotherhood in the context of British colonial presence, which is viewed as a Western corruption, contamination of Islam. The movements, the purist movements that precede the Brotherhood and influence the Brotherhood, is one major one is the Wahhabi movement, which began in 1744, and then the Salafist movement by another group. Wahhabi was on the Arabian Peninsula. The Salafist movement was in Egypt. It was a group who wanted to purify Islam of the modern corruption of the culture and the religion. Okay, which a major source of which is colonialists. So that's the political cultural context for Al-Banna coming on to the scene. Now, the creed of the Brotherhood: Allah is our goal, the Prophet is our leader, the Quran is our law, jihad is our way. Jihad as killing in the path to Allah. Al-Banna was known for writing about what he called fan al-mat, the art of death. Dying in service of Allah is our highest desire. We love death more than life. Okay? This is the path to paradise. Al-Banna, by the end of the 20s, was expressing his admiration of Hitler. Mein Kampf came out in 1924, 2 volumes, and I'm not sure the whole thing has ever been translated into Arabic. It's a pretty hefty volume, but many portions of it were being translated into Arabic, and Hitler confirmed for Al-Banna, if those of you who have had the stomach to read Mein Kampf, that Zionists revealed the true evil of the Jews. Okay, Hitler said he realized what the evil of the Jews is exactly when he first came across Zionists in Vienna. It was before the First World War. And Hitler says in Mein Kampf that the aim of the Zionists is not, they don't need a state or a haven or a homeland. That's not it. He says, once again, they dupe the dumb goyim. What they're trying to do is establish a base of operations for extending their control over the whole world. You've seen the Nazi propaganda image of the octopus with its tentacles around the whole world. Also an image you'll see in Jihadist and other Arab propaganda images of Jews. The octopus, it's a well-known image. And secondly, Al-Banna said that he learned the importance of propaganda. Hitler writes quite a bit about propaganda in Mein Kampf. And he explains that the purpose of propaganda is not to inform the public of who you are and what your platform is. It's not to inform. He says it's not even to persuade. It's to incite zornig al-hassa, wrathful hatred. It's to incite. And you might be thinking, well, duh. I mean, look at the propaganda now. That's obvious that it's calculated to incite. Incite what? Incite hatred. Hatred becomes the path to redemption, to purification. You understand? Not love of neighbor, hatred of the Jew in particular. So this is, he learned that, as Hitler says, something of the most insidious lie will always stick. Let me give you just a couple of examples. I got this from Bernard Lewis. Of this propaganda, the Jews are accused of infecting girls with syphilis and sending them to Egypt to spread the disease. They're accused of supplying Egyptian women with hyper-aphrodisiac chewing gum. They're accused of spreading cancer among Egyptians by devising and disseminating carcinogenic cucumbers and shampoos. And of course, Jews promote drug trafficking, devil worship, and in Egypt they're organizing a campaign to legalize homosexuality in order to undermine Egyptian society. The Jews, again, as the source of all evil, undermine all moral value, all truth, all integrity. So that, and not just the blood, purity of race. With the jihadists, it's purity of soul, salvation of soul. So that ultimately the extermination of the Jews, certainly hatred of the Jews, becomes a religious duty and not an unpleasant necessity. This is a difference. If you remember, you've seen footage or text of Himmler's pep talks to the Einsatzgruppen. This is a glorious page that will never be written. He praises them for being able to stand beside a row of 100, 500, 1,000 bodies and remain good men. It's an unpleasant necessity. Himmler did not speak of killing a Jew as a way of entering heaven. You get this in the jihadists. Certainly, you get this in the jihadists. In 1938, the Brotherhood in Egypt led demonstrations against Egyptian Jews. They held a parliamentary conference for Arab and Muslim countries in Cairo, where they distributed Arabic language copies of Mein Kampf, or selections from Mein Kampf, and the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. They sent delegations from 1935 on to Nuremberg rallies in Germany. Yeah. 1939, they bombed a Cairo synagogue. So they're already in the late 30s operating. Hajj Amin al-Husseini made a shidduch connection between the Brotherhood and the Nazis. Al-Husseini, at the risk of getting ahead of myself a little bit, had his first meeting with the German consul in March 1933, after Hitler had come to power. There was a changing of the guard everywhere. You know, the Nazis are in power. So Al-Husseini's connection with the Nazis goes back to the very rise of the Nazis in 1933. In 1935, he hooked up Rahman al-Banna, the brother of Hassan al-Banna, with the Nazis, and the Nazis began subsidizing a lot of their anti-Jewish activities in Egypt and in Palestine. Now, after Al-Husseini had incited riots in 1920 and was tried in absentia, found guilty, on the 8th of May 1921, Herbert Samuel, the governor of the British Mandate, appointed him Mufti of Jerusalem, which made him, the voice of the Muslim community in Palestine. And he immediately declared a jihad against the British and the Jews in his newly appointed position. I mentioned his meeting with German consul Heinrich Wolff in 1933. The Nazis helped to fund the Arab Revolt, which broke out 1936. And the Arab Revolt was already had its influences and connections with the Nazis. At the time, there was a song, a refrain that said, no more monsieur, no more mister, no more French, no more British. No more monsieur, no more mister, in heaven Allah, on earth Hitler. According to Matthias Kunzel, who does good work on this, he says that the revolt took place against the background of the swastika. Youth organizations paraded as Nazi scouts, and Arab children greeted each other with the Nazi salute. In 1936, the German Foreign Ministry, in case you're thinking, well, Arabs, Semites, anti-Semites. In 1936, the German Foreign Ministry made a point of clarifying that the Nuremberg laws pertain only to Jews, not to Arabs. They didn't, Nazi Germany never shut down any Islamic studies centers, Arab language programs, none of that. They did, well, speaking of language, they did burn Bibles in Hebrew, not in German, of course, but Hebrew is part of the Jewish contagion. On the 2nd of October, Al-Husseini had a meeting, 2nd of October 1937, had a meeting with Adolf Eichmann and Herbert Hagen. Some sources say only Hagen made it to that meeting. Others say no, Ackerman was there too. Doesn't matter in the end. On October 13th, 1937, Al-Husseini once again fled Palestine, wanted for inciting riots in Palestine. 2 years later, 1939, Al-Husseini had set up a base of operations in Baghdad. And on the 3rd of April, 1941, Al-Husseini led a coup against the British-backed Iraqi government. Also, by now, he's on the Nazi payroll. He led the coup. The British regained control of the government by the end of May. On June 1st, he incited what's known as the Farhud, which was a pogrom against the Jews of Baghdad. 600 Jews in Baghdad were murdered, several thousand injured, hundreds of shops destroyed. I should point out, we shouldn't forget, the righteous who helped the Jews in Europe, and then in Baghdad, there were Assyrian Christians who came to the aid of the Jews. Like the Assyrians, the Jews, as I'm sure you know, had a presence in Baghdad since the destruction of the first temple. The Talmud is Talmud Bavli, right? It's Babylonian Talmud. Iraq is, Babylon. So after the Farhud, British regained control. Once again, the Mufti is on the run until 28th of November, 1941. Now, keep in mind, what else is going on? The timeline of the Holocaust. Operation Barbarossa, June 22nd, 1941. It was the original plan was to launch that operation May 1st, but the Wehrmacht got held up in the Balkans. It took a little longer than they had anticipated to get a foothold there, so it was postponed to June 22nd, which puts them in Russia later in the fall and into the winter, right? Russian winters are brutal. So anyway, they're moving east. They make the move in the Iraqi coup to the east, because there's oil in that region. And the extermination of the Jews is well underway by the time of this first meeting with the Fuhrer, November 28th, 1941. Soon after that meeting, Husseini met with Eichmann, and at that meeting, he was informed of the plans concerning the final solution, and he wanted in on it. Al-Husseini was close to a number of the Nazi murderers, including Rudolf Höss, Commandant of Auschwitz, Josef Kramer, the Belsen Commandant, Franz Thieres, Commandant of Mauthausen, but the one, well, let me step back one sec. After his meeting with Hitler and his, developing ties with the Nazi murderers, he wrote this in his diary. Our fundamental condition for cooperating with Germany was a free hand to eradicate every last Jew from Palestine and the Arab world. I asked Hitler for an explicit undertaking to allow us to solve the Jewish problem in a manner befitting our national and racial aspirations and according to the scientific methods innovated by Germany. The answer I got was the Jews are yours. And so here we have Al-Husseini meeting with Himmler. Of the Germans I mentioned, including Eichmann, he was probably closest with Himmler. Himmler, you recall, was the head of the SS and was entrusted as head of the SS with the implementation of the final solution. Al-Husseini took an active part in that endeavor through the establishment of Muslim killing units, SS killing units, consisting of all Muslims, operating mainly in the Balkans. I've seen estimates saying that there as many as 100,000 Muslims were recruited into these several killing units. I don't know, that may sound a little high, but the most infamous of the killing units was the Hanshar Division, which had 21,065 men. Most of these Muslims were not Arabs. Most of them were from the Balkans. And the commander, Carl Gustav Zauberzweig of the Hanshar Division, reported to Berlin that the Muslims see in our Führer the mission of a second prophet. In the Arabic language introduction to Mein Kampf, post-war, translated into Arabic by a Nazi who had converted to Islam, Louis Al-Hajj, Louis Al-Hajj, in his introduction to Mein Kampf, refers to Hitler as a great jihadist. Okay. Al-Husseini, Al-Banna, they understand Hitler to be carrying out jihad. Now, how do Al-Husseini and Al-Banna come together more tightly, more closely? Al-Husseini was wanted as a war criminal. He went into hiding in France. A lot of them went into hiding in France before they went elsewhere. He turned up on the 20th of June, 1946 in Cairo, where Hassan al-Banna, Sayyid Qutb, gave him a hero's welcome, glorifying Al-Husseini, verbally and in the Muslim Brotherhood press, as a great jihadist carrying out jihad, just as the Nazis had done. Jihad, of course, the aim of jihad, in this case, in this context, is the extermination of the Jews. Sayyid Qutb, this is a very important figure in understanding jihad, this jihadism of the Muslim Brotherhood ilk. And throughout the world, Sayyid Qutb is by far the most influential jihadist ideologue to come out of the Brotherhood. His work, he's known for Milestones, famous work which he wrote in an Egyptian prison. Nasser, who himself had been in the Brotherhood, knew what a danger they would be to his government. He imprisoned quite a number of the Brotherhood members. Qutb was executed in 1966 by Nasser. So he's widely influenced on all the jihadist groups. Most of the active jihadist groups, from Al-Shabaab to ISIS to the Houthis to the Islamic Republic of Iran, to the National Islamic Front in Sudan, to the Al-Qaeda of the Maghreb in North Africa. Most of those jihadist groups have a genealogical tie to the Muslim Brotherhood. And just so I can shamelessly pitch something I wrote, I think I put it in the program. I've written about this in a book called A Genealogy of Evil, Anti-Semitism from Nazism to Islamic Jihad. And ISIS, by the way, is in full swing in Africa now, across Africa, which is another topic. So Qutb is also known for his work, Our Struggle with the Jews, published in 1953, in which he takes the demonization of the Jews as, to the extreme, dehumanizing. Of course, demonizing is dehumanizing. Again, spreading the principle that all evil is Jewish, the existence, the hope, the redemption of mankind depends on the extermination of the Jews. The Jews are by nature evil. They cannot be rehabilitated. Okay, you can see how this is a departure from at least, what is at least ostensibly traditional Islamic thinking, namely, Jews can become Muslims, no problem. We invite them to. This is not jihadist, modern jihadist thinking. This is not Sayyid Qutb's thinking. Yasser Arafat. Yasser Arafat came to Egypt in 1946, same year that Al-Husseini turned up in Egypt. In fact, Al-Husseini brought him to Egypt. He was, I think, the son of Al-Husseini's second cousin, first cousin. Anyway, there was some relation. Al-Husseini arranged for Arafat to receive military training from Nazi war criminals. Arafat, as you know, founded Fatah in 1959. This is before the PLO. In 2002, 2 years before his death, Arafat described Al-Husseini as his greatest mentor, the greatest thinker, etc. Some say that Al-Husseini is actually the mastermind behind the formation of Fatah. Who knows? In any case, his protege, Arafat's very important. Two important leaders in the PLO, as I'm moving ahead, here invoke Nazi phrasing in articulating the aim of the PLO. In 1977, when the PLO had gained a foothold on the world stage, observer status in the UN, right? Even though their charter states there can be no negotiation, there can be no peace, there has to be an obliteration of Israel. Arafat was asked, "What are you doing? This looks like you're negotiating, right? You're pulling back on the terrorist operations to get a place at the table at the UN." And this is just a first step. Salah Khalaf says, and then once we get a state, a two-state solution, then we'll be on the way toward a final solution. 1993, Oslo Accords, Sakha Kabash, once the Palestinians have control of Gaza and the West Bank, we will proceed to a final solution. They're not interested in a two-state solution. They never have been. They can't. Two-state solution to these guys is blasphemy. It's not just a bad idea politically. It would mean the damnation of their souls. So we come to Hamas, Harakat al-Muqawama al-Islamiyah, the Islamic resistance movement, founded in on December 9th, 1987, by Ahmed Yassin, Muslim Brotherhood, of course. Yassin was a devoted Qutbist, follower of Sayyid Qutb. He was sent into Gaza early 80s, where he set up Islamic study centers. He formed Hamas in 1987. What's happening in 1987? First Intifada. Right. I mean, they're in turmoil. Yassin sees this as an opportunity to establish his own organization. And as I mentioned yesterday, one of his slogans is that, killing Israelis, killing Jews, again, is not an unpleasant necessity, it's an act of devotion to God. It's holy and pleasing to God. This is a little different from how the Nazis are understanding it. Now, the Hamas Charter. If you want to know what they think, look at what they say. They'll tell you. In the preamble to the Charter begins with a quote from Hassan al-Banna, who said, "Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam obliterates it." Where Israel is a reference to the Jewish people, not the Jewish state. Al-Banna was assassinated in 1946 before there was a Jewish state. Article 2 explains that Hamas is a branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. Article 7, you see the eschatological project here, ultimate redemption of humanity. The day of judgment will not come until the Muslims kill the Jews. The trees and the stones will cry out, "Oh, Abdullah, there is a Jew hiding behind me, come kill him." Nature itself will vomit up the Jews. The Jews are an unnatural alien presence on the landscape of creation. Palestine is an Islamic waqf land. Waqf land is a very serious matter to these guys. And not just to the jihadists. The notion of waqf is it's land consecrated to Islam, previously conquered by Islam, lost, and therefore has to be reconquered, taken again. We're talking about Spain, right? You can't, peace is not negotiable. To ask a Muslim to negotiate peace is to ask a Muslim, the jihadist Muslim, to renounce Allah. Jihad is the only solution. I mentioned yesterday, I will assault and kill, and how that's been, rape, butcher, torture, added on to that. Good Muslim mother. Good Muslim mother. I know I have a friend in Israel, IDF reserve, who has a close connection to the interrogators who interrogate prisoners, Hamas prisoners from Gaza. And one of the questions that the interrogator will ask each one is, if you had to choose between the death of your mother and the death of your children, what would you choose? And he says, without exception, the death of my children. I only have one mother. I can have more children. The children are expendable. A good Muslim mother, according to the Charter, will produce more children for jihad. And notice here these familiar anti-Semitic tropes appear in the Hamas charter, which is the charter of Allah. Hamas is Allah. Okay? Hezbollah, describe the party of Allah, Hezbollah, states, Hassan Nasrallah states that Hezbollah is a clearinghouse for all humanity. There is one way to God, one true way, and that's through Hezbollah. So it's here, well, I'll comment on that shortly. But yeah, this, the Jews are, all evil is Jewish. The Jews are behind the French Revolution, Communist Revolution, most of the revolutions. They formed secret societies, Freemasons, Rotary clubs. They're able to control imperialistic countries, they make these countries colonize the world, etc. And the proof text for this is Protocols of the Elders of Zion. They use all evil. They undermine societies. They destroy values. They corrupt conscience. They deteriorate character. And notice, Israel, Judaism, and Jews are one and the same. And Zion, we can add Zionists. They are the source of all evil. What led Sayyid Qutb to undertake his ideological journey and write his warnings to the Islamic world came after he spent 2 years in the U.S., 1948 to 1950, and he was so aghast at the decadence and corruption, the Jahiliyyah, right, the moral depravity, that he saw Islam as the only solution to the purification of this horror. And sometimes I think, what if he should go there now? Zionist world conspiracy, after Palestine, they're going to expand as embodied in the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Now, what are some of the ramifications? You can see that both Nazis and Jews Nazis and jihadists cast the Jews in metaphysical categories, and demonizing the Jews, satanizing the Jews, to use Joel Carmichael's term, rendering the Jew invisible, ubiquitous, and the effort to purify the world of this evil has to be equally ubiquitous. And you can't, for the jihadists, you can't be certain of the defeat of the Jews until the jihadists are ruling all of humanity. And if you take the time to read the Constitution of the Islamic Republic of Iran, that's the stated aim of the Islamic Republic, is to bring all of humanity under the rule of Islam for the sake of all of humanity. So the jihadist war against the Jew, like the Nazi war against the Jews, is more than a war against a Zionist entity. It's a war against Satan. It's an apocalyptic war. Now, is this about Israel? Would this go away if the Jews should leave Israel? Can't happen. According to Muhammad Hussein Yaqub, no. He said that if the Jews left Palestine to us, would we start loving them? No. And he says the Jews are infidels, not because I say so, but because Allah says so. They are enemies, not because they occupy Palestine. They would be enemies if they didn't occupy a thing. It's not about the occupation. It's not about checkpoints. It's not about, apartheid, colonialism. It's not about any of that, according to the sheikh here. It's about the redemption of humanity, salvation of humanity, purging the world of the evil Jew. Robert Wistridge, my guy, kind of sums up with this statement, comparing, the holy text, so to say, of Nazis and jihadists. Their Bible might be the Quran, not Mein Kampf, but the mental structures and worldview behind their actions have striking analogies to German National Socialism. I'm not saying it's the same. I already pointed out, extermination of Jews, for one, is an unpleasant necessity. For the other, it's a glorification of God. As you kill Jews, you pray and praise God, Allahu Akbar. You put it up in social media. It isn't a night and fog operation. The Muslim fundamentalists, like the Nazis before and during the Shoah, rant against the anonymous powers of globalization in the plutocratic West. Like their totalitarian predecessors, they falsely claim to speak for frustrated, underprivileged, impoverished masses betrayed by more traditional Arab and Muslim ruling entities. By the way, these jihadists view Muslims who are not with the program as much as the enemy as they do the Jews. ISIS slaughtered thousands of Muslims as they went across the Middle East. Today's the 10th anniversary of the ISIS slaughter of the Assyrian Christians in Iraq, by the way. So, as I continue, the anti-Semitic conspiracy theories lie at the very heart of the Muslim fundamentalist and Arab nationalist worldview today, linking together plutocratic finance, international Freemasonry, secularism, Zionism, communism as dark occult forces led by the giant octopus of international Jewry. This mythical structure of thought is in many ways virtually, meaning not quite, identical with Nazi anti-Semitism. I think one difference is in the Nazis you have a usurpation of God. The word of the Fuhrer is law. The Fuhrer is like God. One Reich, one Volk, one Fuhrer. There's a similar trinity among jihadists as one caliphate, one ummah, one supreme ruler. But in the case of the jihadists, you have what I call an appropriation of God. Hezbollah, the party of Allah, decides who is redeemed and who's damned. The charter of Hamas is the charter of Allah. Ruhollah Khomeini, whoever opposes the state, opposes God. We know what God says, what God wants, and we're here to tell you. Bringing this to a close, Hitler's dying words on paper were he pled with the world in his political last will to resist mercilessly the poisoner of all nations, international Jewry. Carry on this war of salvation. And after the Shoah, those who have most thoroughly, systematically, and profoundly heeded that call are the Islamic jihadists. There are many other anti-Semites, but it's the jihadists who have a nuclear weapons program in the works, right? Who have armies, who pose an existential threat to Israel and to the Jewish people. So what happened on October 7th was decades in the making. And we could go farther back even. So that's who Hamas is, and that's what we're dealing with. And that's what those who say, we are pro-Hamas, I am Hamas, this is what they're saying. Okay. Thank you.